This is such an important event because of the stories are important. We need to hear these stories more and more often. And there's not that many opportunities to hear each other and affirm each other. It's always affirming to hear the stories of other people. It's encouraging. This kind of forum gives people that, gives them the bravery, gives them a sense of knowing that they're not alone.
This is our third Okaeri event, and this fortunately has been my third time attending as well. The first time I attended Okaeri was the first Okaeri in 2014. And at that time, I had only known 2 or 3 other openly gay or LGBTQ identifying Japanese Americans. And when I arrived at Okaeri, I was shocked to see how many people attended that event. I thought that there were only maybe 5 of us in the world because that's all I had met.
I feel like I'm very rarely in space with other LGBTJAs, as well as with other LGBTJAs and families and allies. I feel like it's often like finding each other in a crowd of many, many others. So it feels incredibly empowering and beautiful to be in a space like this.
I'm always kind of floored at like, wow, you know, there's elders here, it's intergenerational, there's young kids that are like, you know, 4, 5, 6 that are trans, like the last one was like Mike Honda's grandchild, all under one roof. That's pretty dang special.
日系って言ってもやっぱり、例えば、両親が日本で育って自分はアメリカで生まれたっていう人もいれば、私みたいに日本で生まれて育ってで、もう日本では生活できないなと思ってアメリカに住んでる、いろいろ理由を持って、アメリカに住んでる人がいると思うので、そういう人たちをつなげる場所っていうのは本当に貴重だなっていうふうに、思うのと、やっぱり、LGBT であると同時に、日本人のアイデンティティを持つっていうのは、あんまり、話題にならないアイデンティティなので、そういう人たちをつなげるためにとても貴重な場所だと思います。
So I'm coming to Okaeri as a volunteer, but also just to become more aware about like how I can advocate more for the LGBTQ plus community, just because I feel like that's something that's not really talked about within the JA community. It's very like a hush-hush type of structure growing up, you know, not really expressing our feelings. So I feel like just being more aware of people's like sexuality and how they identify is just something that we need to learn as people.
As you listen to the speakers in our first panel today, by all means, please be moved, please be touched, and please be inspired by their personal stories. But also witness how they're sharing their personal stories can model how each of us can also share our own personal stories, because each of us does have a personal story, regardless of what role we play in this community.
In 2002, JJ came out to me as gay. How I wish I could say I seized the opportunity to celebrate in JJ's unsolicited sharing, acknowledged their courage, and what must have been an agonizing struggle to get to this place for themselves. But I could not see beyond myself. I was totally blindsided, and my exact words to them were, "This is not the life God has planned for you." I was still numb with shock when JJ left the next day to return to Chicago, where they graduated and have lived ever since. The first segment of my continuing journey would begin and last 12 long years. From the onset, I felt it imperative to reconcile JJ's being gay with my understanding of my Christian faith, and I was driven as well as sustained with this quest. I could not get past the passages in the Bible which are considered to be clearly condemning. I was first consumed with finding out what I had done wrong as a parent to cause this. I struggled to understand why my grief over the perceived loss of this child, whose essence I had for so long been unable to grasp, was so very deep. I was determined to fix this, but when I reached out for help, as you heard, I chose to look only through the narrow lens of my perception of faith and God, hurting JJ greatly. JJ would one day say, "Mom, felt never loved by you, and I don't love you," which broke my heart. I was desperate and tried to read whatever I could for more understanding, as I could sense a brooding darkness over JJ. After JJ admitted that they had been suicidal, I decided that above all else, I wanted my child alive, healthy, and at peace with themselves. I could no longer care if my understanding of the Bible was accurate or wanted to continue my search for an interpretation I could accept. I had for so long been blind to the nature of God, placing conditions and limitations on him that caused so much pain. I was shocked at the words of a Christian Chinese American mom related by Pastor Ken Fong, but her boundless love resonated within me. She said, "I used to think that if my son is gay, that he is going to hell, but I realize now that he is just my son. He is the same son I bore and I've always loved, and I'm not going to reject him. And if he ends up going to hell because he's gay, and I go to hell because I loved him, then I'll just go to hell, because I'm his mom."
What I'm going to take back is also a reconnection to people that I met here on the first year. You know Lei, who was on the plenary at lunch? She came up to me to thank me because I was on the first year's plenary, and she said that I gave her hope. And to come back and for her to come back like 4 years later to be on the plenary talking about her story and her journey just because of how I showed up, that was so touching, because I was practically tearing the whole time she was saying her story, and then it comes full circle. It's like, to be part of that, and it's not about me, it's about each and every one of us just showing up. And she showed up for herself and she showed up for her child, and look what it's done, because I showed up. So for each of us to show up and, switch our light on, it gives other people to switch their light on. And I feel like we're just like, it's like a sea of light workers just lighting it all up.
I was really moved by the stories that were shared by panelists. And it really brought tears to my eyes. Tears not because I was sad, but I was so moved by what people were sharing in terms of the trials and tribulations, but also the courage that people showed to lead with love.
I think why it's actually really important that that this is happening in this time is we're just in a moment in this country where the federal administration is doing everything it possibly can to deny the humanity of so many people, from trans folks to LGBT folks to immigrants and communities of color. It feels even more important to have spaces like this where we're able to come together, not only to build community, but to talk about ways that we can resist and we can be resilient in this moment of attack.
What happened to Japanese Americans should not happen to any other group, and oftentimes using that for the LGBTQ community. When I first started at JCL, within, I think it was days after, I think it might have been just even a couple of days after I started, the Trump administration announced the transgender military ban. And that was a slam dunk for us to be able to speak out on, because during World War II, Japanese Americans were not allowed to serve in the military initially. After much lobbying from JCL, they allowed Japanese Americans in, and they became the most decorated regiments in the Army in the history for who they were. So we were able to directly tie that Japanese American experience to what is now happening today. So I think for us as a Nikkei group here, it is very important to draw those connections to what happened to us in one sense is now also oftentimes happening to us in another way.
Whenever there's a space where LGBTQ people and their allies are building a space where we can be all of who we are, where we can achieve our highest potential, regardless of our sexual orientation, gender identity, and our cultures and our ethnicities can be affirmed, that is a home for me.
I think what I want to bring back is just, the whole theme and the whole kind of, topic of this day has seemed to be stories. I got a chance to share my own story in the mental health workshop, and it's just made me realize how powerful that is. And you know, I always felt like I didn't have a story to tell. I didn't think it was as powerful or as strong or as maybe didn't go through the same hardships that other people who've told their stories went through. But I realized today the importance of just being able to share your story, whether it's your coming out story, whether it's your story of mental health, whether it's your story just about your identity. I understand now how important that is just to share with the people you know, share with people who aren't educated about the community or these topics.
Sharing stories is a vital part, an integral part of social change and social justice. So we have to tell our stories. We wouldn't be here at the Japanese American National Museum if individuals didn't tell their experience about camps and incarceration and resettlement. So share your stories in whatever format that you can.
I feel humble.
Fabulous. I'm grateful.
Grateful. Excited.
Joyful.
Held. Restored. Deeply moved.
I was wrong, thinking I must be the only one. People talking everywhere, telling me I shouldn't get. I do. People haunted every day, hearing that it's not okay. Like you. You can't dance a number, hold your defenses. No need to suffer, taking all your chances. Can't dance a number, hold your defenses. I'm here beside you till you come to your senses. Taking all your chances. Lost, searching for a line we haven't crossed, moving on.